Absolutely. Thank you, Ciprian, very much for the warm invitation. It's wonderful to be in the Future Summit. November is a super packed month. So I'm really grateful that everybody's taking the time to be in these conferences, to attend these conferences, to be inspired, to get new contacts created, to create new forms of collaboration. So really happy to be here. I will start off by introducing a little bit what I do with Ashoka around planet and climate, because I'm here today in my capacity as co-leader for Ashoka's global work on planet and climate. And then I will be gladly introducing our guest today and start off with the conversation. At Ashoka, we have decided a couple of months ago that besides social entrepreneurship and children and youth, we want to focus on a handful of global priorities. And planet and climate is one of them, in the sense of our aim to bring together the world's most powerful social entrepreneurs and their supporters to rebalance the relationship between humanity and planet. And I know it sounds big, but we also believe it can be done, because we have 40 years of institutional history behind us, 4,000 amazing Ashoka fellows that are systems changing social entrepreneurs around 92 countries in the world. And what we're seeing with them is an increasing interest towards planet and climate, and an increasing focus on this priority, which seems to be more and more important, and for the very right reasons, in my opinion. So after we chose this priority as a global one for our organization, what we did is that we did our homework, as any good student does. So we tried to look into our network of fellows and young change makers and corporate partners and business partners. And we ran an all fellows global survey, as well as quite a number of deep interviews with our fellows to understand really which are the big trends when it comes to planet and climate, which are the big points of intersection between fellows working on different topics, be it biodiversity or circular economy or energy or environmental education, like Louise is doing, who's joining us tonight. So we really try to figure out whether there is a paradigm shift emerging in the planet and climate field, because after all, we only have 10 years in front of us to reduce by at least 50% global emissions if we are, to survive as a species on this planet. So we saw a couple of patterns in our fellowship network, some of them encouraging, some of them less encouraging, and we also saw a number of so-called paradigm shifts or trends, which I'd like to introduce to you today before handing over to our speakers. So on the patterns that we saw, Ashoka has around the world close to 4,000 fellows. It's very interesting that close to 600 of them were officially elected for their systems changing work on planet and climate. But what we've noticed very interestingly is that hundreds of others are now shifting all their gear towards planet and climate, whether they were originally selected for their work on education or human rights, which just really shows that this is truly the momentum and this is really truly a global priority. We also saw, unfortunately, that women are underrepresented in the global social entrepreneurship movement for climate, because only a quarter of our fellows that work on this topic are women and 75% are men. But what we're seeing, and Julieta is here as a living evidence, is that young women in particular are taking the floor. And for instance, our cohort of young change makers is much more gender balanced and climate oriented than our cohort of mature senior fellows. So that's a good news. We're also seeing that some fields are overrepresented in the global community of social entrepreneurs that we represent, such as biodiversity protection, everything related to forests and climate smart agriculture. And that probably signifies that these fields are really, really ripe for collective action, for something that's bigger than just individual solutions and then this process of scaling individual solutions. I would be really curious to hear Louise's perspective on that a little bit later. While, for instance, other topics are more novel and we still need to surface bottom-up innovations like circular economy or air pollution or transportation. Speaking of paradigms and of big visions, one of the overarching paradigms that we are seeing is that climate has shifted from being an environmental question, a technical question, to one that is very holistic and that overlaps with many, many other issues. And actually, the climate crisis is a symptom of much deeper problems in our society. And obviously, in this sense, the strongest climate solutions are the ones that are interconnected and solve also other problems, such as poverty, unemployment, healthcare, equity, justice, inclusion, democracy. And fortunately, many, many fellows are working at this intersection between different problems that the world needs to solve. So actually, we would really probably see the world embracing very, very soon this idea that good climate solutions solve multiple problems. And humanity is embracing these climate solutions, not because they save the planet, you know, as much as I like the Captain Planet view, and as much as Corina as a child is very much attached to Captain Planet as the global savior, I believe that nowadays we need to be a little bit more pragmatic, and we need to be looking at systemic solutions that solve multiple problems at the same time. Unfortunately, it seems to us that the floor of funders and philanthropists and supporters of climate innovators is still working in silos and kind of treats, you know, this is the poverty solution, this is the climate solution, this is the education solution, while actually things are much more interconnected and they should be supported in a much more interconnected way. Just to share with you two other paradigm shifts that we're seeing as food for thought. And later in 2021, we will be publishing a very, very interesting global study around these trends that we're seeing and that our fellows are building up together with other stakeholders in our societies. But the two paradigm shifts that I wanted to tell you about is first and foremost that when it comes to the climate question, everyone has a role to play. And there are no bad guys and there are no good guys. And instead, everyone has a role and a responsibility. Back in the day, climate was regarded as this scientific problem or this government problem. You know, the government needs to fix it. The scientists need to fix it. Well, not any longer. Climate is an everyone, everywhere mission. And this is what we need to embrace. And we need to identify our roles in this movement, whether we are parents or teachers or drivers or social entrepreneurs, or as Julieta is, you know, a student. So that's probably a pattern and the principle that we will see as very transformative in the years and in the decades to come. And I think another interesting one is this idea of we are climate, we are the planet. It's not us and the planet, but humanity is actually nature and we are the planet. So, you know, how do we shift the gear from this idea that humans are here to master nature, to conquer nature, to have dominion over nature, to a paradigm in which humans collaborate with nature and in which this collaboration actually brings win-wins and not win-loses, you know, to the game. I've taken up enough with my thoughts. I just wanted to lay the ground a little bit on what we're seeing with our fellows, with our young change makers at Ashoka, and, you know, to open the floor to our guests. It seems today that Latin America, Colombia and Chile are a little bit closer to Romania than Poland, because our wonderful fellow from Poland, Jacek Bozek, who's a senior fellow that started his environmental work in the 80s in Poland and is still very, very active, is not yet here with us, and hopefully he will come a little bit later. But we have Luis from Colombia with us, and we have Julieta from Chile. And let me introduce first Luis and what he does, and then Julieta and what she does, and then give the floor to them to share a little bit more. So Luis Camargo is the founder of OpEPA, which stands for Organización para la Educación y Protección Ambiental. As Latin speakers in Romania, we understand what that means. It's the Organization for Education and Environmental Protection, which is one of the largest, if maybe not the largest, environmental education organizations in Colombia. So good morning, Luis, where you're located in Colombia, and good afternoon to all of us. I'd like you to have the opening words, if possible, just to share with us a little bit more what you do. Colombia is, you know, far, far away from Eastern Europe, where we are based, but I think we share quite a number of problems and maybe also quite a number of solutions. And maybe, you know, from your years of work in this field, what are the main lessons that you have learned? But first, you know, what is it concretely that you've been doing, as you've been selected an Ashoka Fellow quite a number of years ago?
Thank you very much, Corina, and I'm really happy to be here speaking to all of you. Colombia, first of all, is one of the countries of mega diversity. So Colombia, I would say, because of the relationship of size, would be the most biodiverse country in the world, because right now it's second to Brazil, but Colombia is very small compared to Brazil. So this is a really important aspect of it, because biodiversity is all around us in Colombia. And the work that I do really came from realizing that we were disconnecting ourselves from nature as time was moving forward, and as we are become more modern, we became increasingly disconnected. And this disconnect is directly related with the way we relate to nature. And as you said, our relationship with nature is fundamental in order to create a harmonious future for all of us. So in realizing that, I also reflected on my personal experience and all the opportunities I had um, to be in touch, in contact with nature, and the importance that had in my development as a person. So I connected those two things, and I started OpEPA in 1998 in order to reconnect children and youth to nature. And that was the main objective. Try to create opportunities for children and youth to start having experiences in nature that allowed them to really reconnect and become or realize that they are nature, that we are nature, as you mentioned. So this is the work we've been doing. We've worked with over 100,000 children and thousands of teachers in what we now call nature-based education, and how to apply nature-based education in the school and outside the school. We believe that environmental education is something that, you know, we need to move past and start looking at nature-based education as a way of incorporating all aspects of learning and nature together, because we are nature, we live around nature, and nature ultimately is our teacher. It's the canvas of learning, so it's also the place where we can learn, and it has the wisdom to teach us how to actually create the conditions for life to thrive. So this is what we've been trying to do and foster towards a regenerative future.
I don't want to barge in, just to let you know that Jacek, sorry, is most likely going to join us any second now. So if he pops up, now you know, and I will get out now from the call. Great to hear what you do in Colombia. It's really amazing. So if you can take me out, thank you.
Thank you, Ciprian, and thank you, Louise, for laying the ground. I'm really curious to find out more, because I have a 3-year-old at home and a 5-year-old. So, and we live in the capital city of Romania. So for me, figuring out the ways to have, as you said, not only environmental education, but nature-based education for my children is really important. And I would add, you know, how do we make it mainstream? How do we make sure that not only the rich parents or the, you know, relatively well-off parents can are thinking about these things? But I want to also share the floor with Julieta Martinez from Chile, and give her the opportunity to share with us some of the things that she's doing in Chile. There is an Ashoka interview with you, Julieta, on our global website, but it is in Spanish, so I've tried to read it and to understand a little bit more that what you do. I think I got it. In any case, it looks like people are referring to you as the Greta Thunberg of Chile, because at just 16 years old, at 16 years of age, you have managed to mobilize hundreds and thousands of Chilean teenagers to be climate fighters. And I'm just wondering, why you started this passion in your life. How do you go about being a student and focusing on this climate question that is of concern for you. So yes, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Corina, and thank you so much for the opportunity and the invitation. Actually, this is my first panel like in English, so I'm pretty nervous. My English not that good, but I will try my best for sure. As you said, I'm a 17-year-old climate activist, and for gender equality activist, I started at the age of 12. I understood that I had to get out of my comfort zone. I had to search for solutions. To be more specific, work with girls. Here in Chile, we have a big problem that it's everything that happens in the capital stays in the capital. And we are a really long country. I understood that there was a lot of young women, young girls that are looking for making new projects, getting to social innovation, searching for solutions to fight against inequalities or fights against climate crisis, for example, but they don't have the spaces, they don't have the education, they don't have like the mechanism to actually get to work. Actually, I prepared, if I could say like what are the key lessons I have learned in my climate work so far, I think I could concentrate in two things. First of all, and I think I have like a little bit of a connection with Luis, is that education is a climate solution. To be more specific, girls' education, it's a climate solution. Girls who know her sexual and reproductive rights, who promotes climate resilience, who understands and works based on circular economy, right? Learns the ability to question things, question herself, question the society, how it works, what things needs to be changed, who are the leaders she wants to follow and why. And of course, how she can mobilize her own community and through her own empowerment, how she can begin to be a change maker. And of course, an educated girl can actually change the world. Another thing that I wanted to talk, like my experience here in Chile, that if we really want to change, if we really want to aim for a sustainable development, no one, but really no one can be left behind. I live in Chile, Santiago, that it's a country where 1% of the population have 26.5% of the wealth, where I people that struggles every day to survive. And I know that the priority of that people, it's not to take care of the environment, is to take bread to the table every day. So I started getting information about this subject. I understand that we are facing a lot of climate problems. We're facing a mega drought that has been going for more than 10 years. Here in Chile, we have something that we call sacrifice zones. I don't know if you heard about this concept before, but sacrifice zones here is something like territories of massive concentration of polluting industries and toxic waste. And there's a lot of community that has been affected of her health or her local culture, and it's really a really sad reality. At the age of 12, I understand that we are living in an unequal country. At the age of 14, I understood that we can't, something, I don't know how to explain it in English, but I really feel that a climate crisis, environmental crisis, is also a human rights crisis, because always the most vulnerable people always gets on top of the problems, always gets the worst part of the problem. So I think just for to finish, I know that I talk a lot about this kind of things, but I feel like we really need to understand that we not live alone. We have to get out of our comfort zone. And of course, if we really want solutions, every single one of us, as you said, Corina, it's not a work of the government, it's not a work of the scientists, right? It's a work of everyone. And everyone, of course, has to be part of the change.
Thank you, Julieta. You're such an inspiring voice, and your English is wonderful, by the way. So don't feel at all emotional about it. Just a very quick follow-up question to what you've shared with us. Can you explain in a couple of words more concretely how this passion of yours looks like in your day-to-day life? You know, as a 17-year-old, I imagine you go to school, you spend some time with your friends. So what are the other activities that you do as a climate activist in Chile at age 17?
Like about climate, I would like to talk more about before quarantine, before this global pandemic, right? I love to get into schools. I get to schools to know better kids that are getting affected in sacrifice zones, kids or little childs or youth that are getting affected by these problems, and they're just taught every day like more of what are their realities and what's the big problem. It's nobody's listening to them. That's like my main focus right now, actually. Like I understood, like I live in the capital in Chile. I have to be a little bit of more context, right? I live in the capital Chile. I'm in a good school. I have a house. I have access to internet, and that really frustrates me somehow. Like I understand that I have so much of a privilege in what I'm doing to actually make a change for those people that actually right now that don't have a voice, don't have a spaces. That's actually something that kept my opinion and like my attention. Sorry, and I know that I have to work on my in the school things, of course, and I try to balance everything. Sometimes I get super overwhelmed, but I think the thing that motivates me right now is that I'm happy with what I'm doing. I think that this generation, the generation Z, it's super powerful and really wants a lot of changes. And if I can make something, even if it's little, even if it's just a single thing, it's important. Maybe can change the life of one person, of one girl, of one woman, and that's enough for me. So actually, it's not enough, but I want to keep going for that path.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I see that Jacek is also here. Hello, Jacek.
Hello, everybody. I had some technical problems. You know, the technical problems is really problems, and I am really nervous, but now is okay. I see everybody. Hello.
No problem. We were joking a little bit earlier that Poland is farther away from Romania, where the Future Summit Conference is based and where I am based, than Chile and Colombia. But we're really glad to have with us. And I'm so happy to see you again, Jacek. For those of you that don't know him, Jacek Bozek is an Ashoka Fellow from Poland, who as early as 1988 founded an organization called Klub Gaja, that became a blueprint for environmental activism in Poland. And basically, Jacek has been leading this battle for over 3 decades, it seems to me. And Jacek, we have with us Julieta today, who's 17, and she's based in Santiago, and she's was sharing with us about her journey as a climate change maker and as a change maker in general. So now I'm really glad to hand over the baton to you so that you can share a little bit with us what you have been doing in the past 30 years with Klub Gaja, and what are some of the key lessons that you've learned in these past decades about what it takes for us to balance again the relationship between humanity and the planet?
I suppose I have to start from my childhood, because the most important thing in my life was that when I was very, very young, I was very ill, very sick. And I spent a lot of time in hospital. And that experience showed me that every life is very important. That the life is important, that if you have the gift, because this is gift, life is gift, and we have to care about any life. We cannot talk only about people. We are interdependence. we are together, the trees, the rivers, the animals, we are together in our life. Now, of course, we're able to say that we live on one planet, but everything starts in our hearts. This is my opinion, in our hearts. And when people ask me why you started many years ago work with ecology for the planet, I said that most important thing for me, it was animals, because I love animals. This is the first. And if you love somebody, if you love the environment, animals, other people, you try find the way for help people and animals. Which way you able to help them? And it was the reason that I started when I was very, very young in communist time, that the first what I made it, that I started be vegetarian when I was a very young person. In the communist time, it was very funny because everybody dreams about the meat, you know. Maybe you not remember, but it was like that. And in 80s, when the revolution in Poland started, we decided with our friends that we want to do something for animals and for planet. It was the reason why we started the Klub Gaja. More than 33 years in this moment. But we start in underground, we cooperate with Solidarity in underground. It was not easy, of course, because nobody have the money for that. Any projects, any money, you know, any money. And what was most important, it was hearts. Yeah, what we want to do for planet. Now in my organization, we lead few, I hope, the big campaigns, especially Święto Drzewa is something like 3 days. And we operate around the Poland. We plant the trees with the schools, with the local governments, with the artists. We planted about 1 million trees around the Poland with 1 million people. And we established many gardens, parks. This is the one part of our work. And another, we still work with animals' rights, with the Polish politicians, with the local people, local governments. We want to change the behavior in my country for animals. And I suppose this is connected with the climate changes. And the last thing is that in our work, we use the art. Art is very important in our work because I used to be an actor, pantomime actor, and we use the art in our activity.
Jacek, I have a very quick question for you, which is, the question is short. I think the answer will be a little bit longer. In 3 decades of environmental work in Poland, which is still considered to be one of Europe's most conservative countries when it comes to climate and environment, what has changed and what hasn't changed?
Wow, this is very. This is not very easy, but I suppose the most of the thing, like I said, start in our hearts. 30 years ago, people was much more open for changes than now. People now mostly think about work, health, things like that. They not understand still that everything connected. My health connected with the good air, yeah, good water, everything, good food, like COVID now. Many scientists said that what I eat, which way I thinking, cooperate with my health, with COVID. And I suppose in 80s and 90s, people was very, very open. But after that, many people decided politics is not my way. I have to work with my family, sometimes go to the church, and maybe if people need the help, I'm able to help people with church. It was completely different than now. Now is that young people, and this is the very big revolution in my country, many young people change, for example, the diet. This is not the vegetarian way. Now in Poland is the vegan way, like the big movement of vegan way. You know, it's a surprise for me because for many, many years, nobody was interested even in vegetarian way. Now Warsaw is a capital of vegan restaurants in Europe. Surprise. And I suppose now, if you see the information about Poland, now is many young women and men and old too on the street, and tell to our government the world a change. We are ready for changes. And I suppose in Poland, after 2-3 years, it will be different country. But this 30 years, it was capitalism. Everybody think about capitalism. And now I suppose is a little changes after COVID and things with the women.
Thank you very much, Jacek, for your reflection. When actually our Ashoka colleagues in Poland told me about this Warsaw being the #1 place in Europe for vegan food, I didn't believe them. But when I traveled there at some point last year, I can definitely tell it is the case. And I think so as well. The younger generation in Central and Eastern Europe, I would say, not only in Poland, has really so much to say and is changing things quite a lot. I want to go back to Luis now. You know, we're traveling across the ocean to Colombia. You were mentioning about nature-based education, Luis, and maybe you can share with us a little bit more about what you do and what the impact of your work has been so far. But I would also like you to reflect, in addition to this, about this question of, you know, I think we can all agree in this panel, and Julieta has very clearly said that climate is a much more complex thing than we look at, and the climate question is much more complex. And I would say it is an ethical one as well. It's a moral one. As Julieta was saying, you know, the most underprivileged people suffer the most, although they cause climate change the least. And for instance, the younger generations are to suffer the most, although they have caused the least of the problem. So how do you address this question of intergenerational ethics in your work? And how do you make sure that you do not polarize generations? So, you know, to have the young people say that the older generation is to blame for what they did to the planet. And, you know, how do you make sure we all row in the same direction in one boat?
Okay, so I would like to start, and I'm going to share my screen for 1 second, with this image. This is the basis of my work, really. Especially because if we look at the climate problem, or the biodiversity loss problem, or, you know, any of our large social or environmental problems right now, they're all associated to dysfunctional relationships. So we need to really think, if we're going to address any of these systemic problems, and question how we're relating to different things. And in my model, I propose that, you know, the 3 main dysfunctional relationships we have are with ourselves, with others, and with nature. And it's fundamental. So my work starts reestablishing relationships with nature, but other people work reestablishing social or, you know, community relationships, and other people can work starting with the self. Nonetheless, the 3 need to be connected, because if we want to enhance or bring what I call the regenerative capacities of people and of the world, we need to really establish a connection between those 3 levels of relationship and be intentional and aware in the creation of these relationships. This allows us to bring upon ourselves the realization of our interbeing capacity. So our capacity to feel ourselves as being nature. And this you mentioned initially, and this is fundamental. So the main purpose of education is to enhance the regenerative capacity in people. And this is why we've chosen nature-based education as a focus, because it allows us to bring people, and it can be any people, close to nature and reflect on their self, on their relationship with others, and on their relationship with nature. And in terms of inclusion and the importance of bringing everyone into this space, the good thing about the focus of our work is that nature-based education does not have to be in the wilderness. You don't have to really travel anywhere. You can, and if you can, you should. But it has to do also with bringing nature into the classroom, bringing the classroom out into nature. It doesn't matter if it's the schoolyard, the urban park, or a wilderness. It's important just to start relating and associating living systems to learning. And this is a key aspect of it. The other thing is that as we work, for example, in Bogota, Bogota is a city of 10 million people with big disparities as many other Latin American cities. So we have, over 75% of the population in Bogota living, really close to poverty line, and then some others that are flying, and maybe 1%, as Julieta said, living with really big bank accounts. But this disparity really affects access. So we've created, for example, something that we've called the network, the Mountain School Network of Bogota. And it's actually a horizontal network where we bring students and teachers from all the schools. It doesn't matter if they're public, private, wealthy, or poor, it doesn't matter. We bring them together, and we use nature as the point of connection, because nature actually is a neutral space to also recognize each other and recognize ourselves, and build empathy not only between people, but empathy with nature. So the work is gathering people to understand and to start working for a common goal towards universal well-being, to the well-being of the planet, of people, but of all life within the planet. And I think that's a key aspect of it. So by bringing all these kids and teachers and giving them the opportunity in nature to recognize the core essential element that they are all part of nature, they start collaborating in a different way, and they start building regenerative relationships and a different mindset on how they approach not only their relationships between each other, being children to the adult, or wealthy children to poor children. That doesn't matter. It doesn't become about the differences. It starts becoming about what makes us unite. And ultimately what unites us all is our planet and Mother Nature, and our capacity to build caring relationships with nature and with others. So by fostering that change of perspective or focus, people really connect and start working together, and it becomes really inclusive, because you start seeing collaborations and people helping each other on the differences, because money is not the only difference that excludes. Some people with a lot of money, for example, don't have access to experiences that bring them or close to nature or close to culture or other things. So by really mixing it up and realizing that we're not going to generate guilt and difference, but we're going to generate empathy and connections. This is how we start focusing our work. And obviously nature becomes the scenario for all of this. And once we realize we are nature as a group collectively, we start building all the other actions in our lives towards the health of our planet and the health of our communities. And I think this is really interesting because it has a lot to do with what Jacek said. By falling in love with animals and realizing in animals that we are part of them, then we start treating ourselves in a different way too. So it's all part of that, generating empathy with the natural world too, in the process.
I have an immediate follow-up question for you, Luis. Just wanted to remind everybody that they can post questions in the chat of the conference and probably also in the Facebook live channel of the conference. So please feel free to ask questions for our panelists, for Julieta, for Luis, for Jacek. Ciprian will pass them over to us, and I'm very, very happy to raise them to our guests. Following on what you've said, Luis, one of the principles, I didn't speak about it in the beginning when I was sharing what we're seeing with our fellows, because it sounds pretty complicated, is this concept of expansive empathy. And the fact that, to fix quote unquote climate, the idea is to expand our empathy towards all living beings, towards future generations and past generations as well. So I think that's probably a solution there. But my question for you was, how do you institutionalize this type of work? I think that you can do it in one school, in two schools, in three schools, in five schools, but how does it become a norm? How does it become a rule and an institution within society in Colombia and beyond? What's the strategy for that?
I think there's a huge challenge, especially if we recognize that the educational system is probably the system that is furthest behind in any shift towards, something more progressive. It's still anchored in the way it was created over 100 years ago. And there's limitations to how we can transfer. So one of the things we've been trying to do is actually bring the benefits of being in nature, both cognitive, mental, in terms of health, in terms of, learning better, and associating that with what the schools require. And it's sometimes difficult because the way schools create exams and create benchmarks sometimes separates us from going outside. But as we realize that education can actually be enhanced by a learning environment that's a lot more open and fosters systemic thinking and fosters creativity, and that the grades and performance can be enhanced by those experiences, the schooling system starts bringing those experiences into the system. To give you an example, in Chile right now, we're building a secondary education, like a program in a university for teachers that actually brings the capacities for teachers to bring the classroom outside, which is the second limitation. Since teachers have been taught to teach within classroom walls, they don't know how to move the classroom elsewhere. They know how to teach. They do not really know how to become guides of exploration and learning, of discovery. And we need to start giving those tools to teachers. So those two things are going to really empower the system to start shifting. And I think even though the pandemic has been really complex in many ways, it has opened a door of opportunity to realize that education outdoors is a possibility. So if we join all these things together, I think we're at the precise moment to start pushing schools to, take the classroom outside, start exploring new ways of teaching, and really fostering the skills for teachers to change the way they teach towards student-centered and nature-based education.
There's an Ashoka fellow in the US which actually took advantage of the pandemic to push for exactly this type of change that you're mentioning, Luis. And she actually had quite an interesting number of breakthroughs of making the schools go outside and teach students in nature. And our fellow from Ashoka, Romania, Florin Stoican, who was also a speaker at Future Summit a couple of days ago, he does exactly the very same thing. So I think that these examples are popping up everywhere in the world. And probably, you know, the next question is, how do we put together these efforts? How do we make them collectively tip the system at global level? But, you know, we have a bit of time today, or maybe even later, to take this up. I want to go to Julieta now, because you know, something that has been puzzling me about the Fridays for Future movement and the speeches that I heard from Greta Thunberg was this question of, you know, you adults are to blame for all the things that are going wrong. You are doing so many bad things. We, the children, are your victims, and you need to treat us differently. Which is a narrative that, you know, for me as an adult, and sounds a little bit rough. And maybe we need such a you know, tough narrative to shaken us up. But I'm just wondering, what's your take on this narrative about the responsibilities and the faults of generations, young people, elder people?
Thank you. First of all, I would like to say to Luis that I loved the idea of bringing nature into the classroom and get the classroom into like, and then the other way, right? I'm taking notes of everything that in this panel has been said. And now, getting to the question, I just wanted to remark that I think right now, thinking about the pandemic, thinking about how we are doing things, how we're acting, how are we deciding things, I think intergenerational dialogue, it's fundamental. I think the experience of the older generations with the strength of the new generations can make something bigger, can makes actually bigger solutions, and the actually solutions we really need right now. I think I'm thinking about what you say, Corina, of like it's kind of rough. I know it's kind of rough. I have heard too as well the things that Greta, for example, have says. And for the other side, I would like to tell you more much, like, I don't want to generalize, but my experience. I have been feeling for a really long time that when I'm trying to talk to adults about gender equality, about climate crisis, I feel like I'm talking to a wall. Sometimes I'd get into panels just because they wanted young people to be there, or they want a woman to be there. So in the picture, in the final picture, oh, we have diversity, oh, we have women's, oh, we have young people. And that really frustrated me, because I know I have the privilege to have this kind of spaces to talk about this kind of things. And I know there's a lot of young climate activists that are fighting every day, and things like this happens every day. There one time happens to me that I was talking about climate change. Well, we have to change. I was talking about the situation in Chile, and one of the questions, I don't know why they asked me that, but I was just in the middle of the thing, and somebody asked me, "And you want to be a mother? Would you like to have child? Are you dating with somebody?" And it's really frustrating. I think that's one of the main reasons, like the feeling of talking to all, it's what made us feel like this is a generation that has to change. But I want to make a point very clear, that I believe that the best solution at this time, it's not to resort to the tactic of fear or shock. I don't think that it's the way, like not telling people this is what will happen if we don't change, but saying these are the benefits or the working for a change. I feel maybe shock somebody sometimes works, of course, but in the case of fear, I think fear leads to two things: running or stealing. And with that two things, what we will achieve? just to finish the thing, I would like to. I was thinking about what Jacek said about capitalism and what's our economic system in general. And I feel like I believe we are living in a world where we are being like weaving. I'm trying my best. We are being like weaving. I'm trying my best, but I believe that the world has been growing, of course, in many cases, only concentrating in economic, not social growth. And of course, this not mean neglecting the economy or take out the economy, because I have seen lots of fights about these subjects, like, oh, if we take care of the environment, the economy it's gonna be destroyed, right? I think more than that, it means seeking sustainable development where ecosystems are respected and cared for. I feel like we need transparent governments that knows that take care of the environment is a priority. And of course, sends the message to their civil society that they have to be part of a change and they have to be present in that changes.
Thank you, Julieta. I liked what you said earlier about intergenerational dialogue. It's, I think, what we should be doing, and it is something that I plan as a co-leader for Planet and Climate at Ashoka to really be doing. This is really just the first occasion in which we bring together a young change maker under 18 with Ashoka fellows, both really passionate about climate and planet, and we plan to do a lot more of these dialogues in 2021. It's really just by listening to each other and feeling empathetic to each other that we can truly overcome these fears and these spaces from which nothing good comes out, to really build together. I want to ask you a question that came from the audience, Julieta, which is a question that obviously is normal, how do you see yourself at 25 years old? What do you want to do?
Tough question.
It's a personal question, I know, but it's probably interesting to hear your thoughts on that,
Well, right now I'm like an existential crisis. No, it's a joke, but I just have one more year of school. Then maybe I'm gonna get into college. But I feel like a lot of people of my age always think about college. It's like the end of we have to get into university. We have to get into university, and there's nothing else. I feel like college is just a way to make better things, to learn more things, to continue my path of what I really love, that it's climate activism, gender equality activism. What I feel I'm going to be in 25 years, I would love to work in something that it's involved of human rights, climate crisis, and how to fight against these problematics. Maybe UN, it's my place, maybe continue with youth-led organizations. I will not be that young in that moment, but it's like, I really feel like it's a part of what I'm going to choose to study, a part of what I'm going to choose to, like, what's going to be my career. I would really love to continue with Tremendas, with my foundation. I really want to see how girls in Chile, girls in Latin America, get to have more opportunities, get to have more spaces, get to have their voices heard. Maybe when I have that future, when I'm going to be 80 years old, and I'm going to be really old and in a little house in the south of Chile, I would love to of girls that get into the platform, learn in the platform, get spaces in the platforms, and continue their path. I feel like I would love to see that.
Thank you for your answer, Julieta. We can play a little bit with time. Ciprian has given us more than 60 minutes for this panel, which I find really engaging and interesting. And there are lots of questions coming up, so we will take a little bit more time for this super interesting conversation. I want to go to Jacek now, so closer to Romania. And there was a question, Jacek, about the business model of your organization. The Future Summit has been a conference in which many many topics were addressed, some more business related, some more technology related. So I think that probably for many people, it's interesting how an environmental movement has been in existence for 3 decades, and what are the resources that you're mobilizing to continue your work and to implement what you're doing.
But the first, I want to say something about the generations.
Please do, please, absolutely.
Yes, because I am a little older than my wonderful friend from Chile. And I suppose the problem is that economy, religion, and culture is very, very old. We are old. Our culture, our religion, and our way of thinking, which way we're able to change the world, is old. This is the really problem. And I completely agree. If we, the people who have 60 and maybe more years, we are old people now, and we think that we know everything. This is not true. We know only things what we had from our experience, nothing more. And now is completely different situation. I suppose we need many changes in our lives, because we are not ready for give the good answer for young people, because we give them answer from our life, but it was, this is not reality now. Okay. Business, we have many platforms. It's not like that Klub Gaja Club, my organization, cooperate with one business or with one local government. We cooperate with many different bodies, and we cooperate with people. Our sources are from very, very different ways. This is the first thing, because I know that politics everywhere is the same. If you want to tell to politicians which way, in your opinion, we able to go for future, politicians are not happy. And you need a lot of different platforms for your sources. The first, people, because everybody are people, politicians, doctors, scientists, local activists. We have to talk with them. And one part of our money is from people. One part of our money is from business. It's mostly that business want to build something concrete, like we have our platform, our program 3-day, and the business, local business or big business, want to build the garden somewhere for school or for city, and we try to cooperate with everybody on that place, and we build, for example, the gardens or parks, things like that. This is another way for looking for money. Another way is, of course, the cooperation with the local governments, not only with the government where I live, because I live in village. I'm not from Warsaw. I live in village in the mountains in Poland, 400 kilometers to Warsaw, where is really money in capital. Everywhere is the same. Money is in capital. And I cooperate with many different local governments, with the schools, but locally. I mostly ask them, what do you need? What do you need? Which way are able to help you? Okay, we try to find the money. Of course, we have in Europe some possibility for European money. And I sometimes use the European money too. And we have the many different levels now, because in the beginning, only from people.
Just to add to your answer, Jacek, because I have the privilege of seeing so many Ashoka fellows and working with so many of them across the world. What you just articulated earlier is what we see with all the social entrepreneurs in our network. For them, what's important is the social impact and the cause and what they're fighting for. And because they're entrepreneurs, they're discovering the resources to make it happen. So somehow, you know, the business model, quote unquote, becomes organically built within their year by year and month after month within their organization, because what they care about is this mission and social impact at the center. And the type of mixed funding that you have is something that we notice with, I would say, 90-something% of our fellows. And they manage to do it year after year and decade after decade, because it's really the mission at the core of what they do. I want to go a little bit to Luis. There's a question from the audience that came in, and I want to ask it, which is that the COVID crisis created, somebody says, an even bigger gap in this dichotomy between human and nature, and that the process of coming back to nature after this long period of staying inside might be complicated. So how does it look like? Do you think that the COVID crisis has brought us closer or farther away from nature? And here I'm also thinking of all these things that, you know, just as the anti-plastic revolution was catching up speed, now we see millions of single-use masks being thrown everywhere in nature. And on the one hand, it seems that we're getting closer. On the other hand, it seems that we're getting even farther away. I really don't know how to interpret this. So just wondering what you feel about it.
I think we're in a moment of deep transition, and that means we need to coexist in a duality. So the pandemic actually, amplified the good and amplified the bad. So as you say, we're seeing, a quick response with disposable plastics and masks and gloves and all that, because that's a response from our, the way we're used to act. But at the same time, being inside our homes for such a long period of time has brought people to feel the need to be outside, the need to be in touch with nature. So I think it has opened the sensibility of, the importance of being in connection with nature. And that's also, that's also an opportunity. So I think we can look at things, the glass half full or half empty. And the glass will always just have half. It doesn't matter where we're looking, the glass is not changing. So the situation will only change as we start acting upon this. The other thing that's important is that I think the pandemic has made evident the interconnections and interrelations of the living systems. So we are ultimately all connected. And this is something that humans have tried to avoid looking into, and the way we consume and we dispose and we treat nature comes from I think from a place where we're really not feeling connected. So the pandemic is making evident that connection. So I guess those three elements allow us to start understanding that as the pandemic passes, we need to take advantage of this need for regaining contact with nature. And in cities, it becomes even more important, urbanization is increasing significantly. Latin America, for example, is over 80% urbanized, even though we have the Amazon basin and we have, incredible wilderness, but most people are living in cities. And if cities don't become centers, for nature, then we start getting into more problems. So I think this is a great opportunity, considering that the safe place to be right now, if you go outside, is not going to a shopping center, is going to a park. So how can we take advantage of these situations that are making people, value urban parks, value nature, and bring it into the surface in order to maybe amplify the capacity for empathy with nature. And I think, as with a lot of the work that Ashoka Fellows have done in empathy, it's the time to go beyond human barriers. It's the time to go into the living system barriers, where we actually work with empathy and we work with, let's say, in collaboration with nature, and not only with people. And I think this is where we need to step up into the future, to start acting regeneratively, start building regenerative economies, regenerative production systems that allow us to thrive together, all life thriving together. That would be our future dream. And I think this is the opportunity we have. We need to bring it to the surface so people can feel it. And if people feel it, people fall in love. And if people fall in love, they walk towards that common good. This is what I truly hope and believe.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's let's just hope that the glass will not stay only half full, but even more than half full. I would like to share a little bit the same question around the COVID impact with Julieta and with Jacek. And I want to start with Julieta because what we have been reading in international media recently is the fact that teenagers like you have been quite profoundly affected from a psycho-emotional perspective with the COVID crisis and with the lockdowns and with the fact that you had to transition to online school. And actually statistics is showing that your generation seems to be the most affected one. So I'm wondering, in these circumstances, how did the COVID crisis hit your generation and your friends and your desire to continue to act as change makers? Are you less determined? Or are you more determined? What has happened with you because of COVID?
It's a pretty interesting question. I think I will like to start with the positive kind of view. Maybe it's pretty connected of what Luis said. I feel like, remember, like in the first question, I talked about how this generation question things, question how our society works, question our decisions, question what we want to do, what we don't want to do, what are the leaders we want to follow and why. I think the pandemic makes like a really big impact, not just in our generation, in all around the world, in all the generations actually, to rethink things, rethink the economy, rethink our policies, rethink why are we doing what we are doing. In the case of my generation, and I'm going to talk really about my perspective, but because I know that maybe there's going to be people of my age that don't think the same. We have two sides. For one side, like the bad side, the access to education has been a really big problem, a terrible issue. For example, in Chile, I know that there's a lot of people, like 30% of young people like me that have problems to getting access to internet, getting access to a computer, a laptop, to get actually like these online classes, right? The other thing is mental health. It's a really terrible issue. There's a lot of young people like me that are getting overwhelmed by school. They want to do other things, but they feel like they don't have the time and don't actually know what to do. For example, I have climate anxiety. I don't know, it's a concept pretty new for me actually, but I noticed that for the people that don't know what climate anxiety is, it's like feeling that it's just a really terrible problem that involves climate crisis, but it feels so far away that you don't know how to deal with it. And I all that, like, because of the pandemic, every day I start like questioning myself, like, I'm here in my house while there's people that are suffering for this crisis and I'm doing nothing to do it, nothing to change it. And with the pass of time, I understand I'm staying in my house because I want to take care of my community. I want to take care of my society. And it's a really big change. The idea of inviting people of my age to stay safe, stay home, and start to, not because they are home, because it means that they are not doing, it's just, oh, I'm not gonna do nothing about it. I'm just gonna close my eyes and feel like there's no problem anymore. I think, for example, with Tremendas, it didn't happen like a dismotivation, as you said. It happens totally like the opposite thing, and it was really a shock for me because the pandemic started, and we said like, a pandemic can't stop us. We have to work even harder, even better, even faster. And now we're not just in Chile, we're in Bolivia, we are in Guatemala, we are in Argentina, we are in different parts of Latin America. And every day we are growing and growing and growing and getting young women involved. Something that I really feel like it's an amazing step to move forward. But yeah, we have like these two sides of the coin, right? For one side, it's like this really feeling of being overwhelmed, this really feeling of what's gonna be my future, how it's gonna be my future. For the other side, I can't get into my comfort zone. I'm at home, but it still can make things, still can make projects and take ideas to actually start to connect with other young people and search for how we can be actual change makers.
A very quick follow-up to that, Julieta, in 2021, who knows?
I'm sorry, Corina, I can't hear you. I don't know it's my problem.
Do you hear me now?
Or
do you hear me now? Did I break for everyone?
I can hear you, Corina.
I can hear you.
Oh, I think it's my problem. Wait, I'm gonna disconnect my AirPods.
Yeah, just disconnect them a little bit.
There it is.
Do you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so very quickly, Julieta, in 2021, we don't know what the future will hold. We need to live again with uncertainty. But what can the system do for your generation? What can we as adults, as leaders of different organizations, as business leaders, what can we do for the generation of 12 to 18-year-olds to help you and support you during these times and to help you continue your change making? Really curious there.
That's a really tough question, but I think first of all, I would like to invite during my lifetime, I have faces a lot of adults that have told me like, yeah, but your generation is like the inactive part of the civil society, just because we are 17 or younger and we can't vote. And that's a really tough thing for us, because like the idea of being inactive, it's like, why? If the same problems that are affecting you are affecting me as well. So maybe to start to begin with, I think if we're searching for solutions, we really have to be like, everyone has to be involved in that solutions. We don't want to just like a little group of people working like, I think this is the best for young people, I think this is the best for girls, I think this is the best for the society. Okay, that's amazing that you're searching for solutions, but have you have the time to ask young people, have you time to ask youth what they feel about that solution? And I'm not talking just about youth, I'm talking about native peoples, I'm talking about migrant communities, I'm talking about sexual dissent. I don't know if that's called in English, I hope it does, like that, right? I feel like we really have to get involved in that solutions. We have to be really part of the change. We don't want people talking for us. We want to be in that table where the decisions are made. And if we start doing that, we start taking young youth as peers, not just maybe we're gonna ask them, maybe we're gonna send them a Mentimeter where they can express in 20 words how they feel about this solution. I think we're gonna make a really big change. I really feel that it's going to be the first time that we're gonna be feel hurt, really, really hurt.
Thank you very much, Julieta. Unfortunately, we're at time. I only want to hand it over to Jacek for a very, very final answer to this question, how you feel that COVID has changed the climate movement and what your hope is for 2021. And we're going to wrap it because the organizers are telling me that we're running out of time. So, yeah.
It was the first question for myself. It was who I am. It was the most important question when COVID started, and when I saw that the world really change. It was the question to myself: who I am, where I am, what I want to do in my next few years, maybe few months. Nobody knows. What is the most important things in my life, in my heart? It was very, very, very difficult questions, because for many years, like you know, for 30 years, I travel a lot, I work a lot, I plant the trees, I work for animals, I fight with politicians, I established the Green Party in Poland, and I was the first leader of Green Party in Poland. I made a lot of things, and in one moment, everything stopped. And this is the most important time now in my life, because I able to come to most important questions: who I am and what I want to do for myself, for nature, for my family, for my local people, and for beautiful world. Not too easy answer, but I feel that we are in the very special moment. And the important is my answer for question to myself, not to my, family and everybody, to myself, who I am and what I want to do the next maybe 10, 20 years. Enough.
Thank you so much, Jacek, and thank you so much, Julieta and Luis. You guys have brought me so much energy and so much hope that I really live energized. And thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. I hand it over to Ciprian, our host.
Don't leave.
Who wants to share with us something. So, Ciprian,
this was one of the most inspirational sessions, not just in Future Summit, but throughout 2020 for me. And I've been in really a lot of sessions and a lot of panels this year and in the past years. And I want to personally thank you for making me think about the future. It might sound funny, this is my job, but a different future, because I realized how I would like to be, 25, 30 years from now, like Jacek or Luis. And I would love that my daughters, who are now 3 and 5, to look like Julieta when they grow up. I think that's the value of conversations as well, not just finding solutions, making money, which is very good, by the way, identifying business models, etc. I think it's also to inspire us and to offer us trust that we can build a better future together. Even if we seem so disconnected these days, look at what this session did to us. And we had friends from India, Singapore, of course Latin America watching us, the US, and most recently South Africa. So thank you again, Corina, for taking this lead. Thank you all for participating.